Cheryl Lynch here, and I'm here today to show you how to use my cool new tool called Curvalicious. I made a quilt like this one in front as a wall hanging, and I got so many compliments on it and so many people wanted to learn how to make it that I decided I had to figure out how to do that because I'd love to share what I know. This one is made out of silk, so you have the option of making it out of silk or making it out of cotton. So to make this seemingly complicated quilt, I had to figure out how to simplify it so that I could teach it, and that is where my tool came in handy. And I designed it and had it manufactured. So you can make it out of silk, you can make it out of cotton, you can make it out of whatever your little heart desires. So if you buy the tool comes with a brochure with directions on how to make these skinny quilts. And inside it are the cutting directions for what you'll need. So first you'll need 3 strips of 4-inch fabric, 2 strips of 5.5-inch wide fabric, and 1 strip of 7-inch wide fabric. And these I cut selvage to selvage. If you decide to make it out of silk, the only difference is you need to stabilize the silk. You don't need to stabilize the 4-inch strips, but you need to stabilize the 5.5-inch and the 7-inch strip. And to do that, you use a product that's called fusible tricot, and you iron it with some steam or a wet damp press cloth onto one side of the quilt, of the silk, and that stabilizes it so the silk won't fray like crazy. So this is what it looks like on the back of your silk. The next step is to make your background, because we're really doing fusible applique. Out of the background and 3 strips, we're getting 3 applique strips, we're getting something that looks very complicated. So let's move these out of the way. And here is the background, the 5.5-inch strips and the 7-inch strip cut in half, so it's 3.5, sewn together. So this is the background for the appliques. And after I sewed it together with a 1/4-inch seam allowance, the next thing you want to do is iron open the back seams. And you want to iron them open, oh, I got a lot of little threads here. You want to iron them open so that they lay flat for when you add your applique. So we're going to set this aside, and I'm going to show you the most fun part of Curvalicious. We're going to take fusible web and iron it onto the back of the 4-inch strips. So I start by cutting my fusible web 4 inches wide. And I'm going to get the iron, I'm going to heat it up, and I'm going to move the cutting board. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to move the cutting board because I already have the fusible on the back of my pieces. So here we go. We're going to take off the paper. And there's a little bit of static electricity going on, but that's good. It kind of holds everything in place. I'll remove all the paper. And you should make these strips equal in length. It doesn't really matter what length they are, but they do need to be equal so that when you add them to the background, they're symmetrical. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 strip at a time. I'm going to take my strip and fold it in half. Make sure when you fold it that you fold it fusible side out. Because with some of the fusibles, especially with this soft fuse, the fusible will stick to itself. And you don't want that to happen. Then you take your Curvalicious ruler and you take one of the edges. This whole tool is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which edge you use. And you lay the edge right against the fold of the 4-inch strip. So now remember, you have your fusible web on there. Then you're going to need to purchase a 28mm rotary cutter if you don't already have one. And a sharp blade is really critical. So you're going to hold down the template and take your ruler and just follow that curve. Follow it around. Move your hand so it doesn't slide. Follow it around. Follow it around. And then you're done. And, oops, if you move it and it didn't cut completely, line it back up. See, it just happens sometimes. Just line it back up and go in there and recut it. Okay, so now that's gone. And keep it in place, and then you're going to cut your other side. Now, if I was in my studio by myself, I would walk to the other side of the table. But I can't do that, so I'm just going to flip it around. Line it back up again along the edge. Make sure all my curves are in place. And then I'm going to do that again, just down the other side. Just take your time. If you're having trouble, angle your rotary cutter a little bit. And it's important after you're done cutting, when you move your fabric away, that your edges align with the edge of the cutter. Because sometimes, you know, you just slide a little bit out of the way. Ooh. And I'm going to take this off, and look what happens when I open this up. There's my design. Okay, let's do it again. And this time, let's hope I do a better job. So here we are with the 4-inch strip. Fold it in half, fusible web side out. Lay the Curvalicious tool on top. And you'll have a little bit of space, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch on either side. Just, you don't want to waste too much fabric. And here we go again. Cut along the edge. Take your time. Watch your little fingers. And let's cope this time. Yay! A good cut. Okay, let's turn it. Line it up again. I'm going to do that again. If you're having trouble getting a clean cut, you can always angle it a little bit. I think we need a little music. You don't want me to sing. And there we go. That's cut number 2. How about I'll do it one more time now that I'm having good luck. One more time for our 3rd strip. So we're getting all those strips for that skinny little quilt out of just a background piece and 3 applique strips. And remember, these are selvage to selvage, so that's how long your skinny quilt will be. If you want it to be longer, you'd have to buy, instead of cutting selvage to selvage, you'd have to buy yards of fabric. And then, however, if you wanted 72 inches long, then start with a 2-yard piece of fabric and cut it parallel to the selvage. I just think I was having bad luck in the beginning. Here we go. Line it up. And there we go. So you can always do something fun with that. I haven't figured out what to do with it yet, but I'm sure it'll be something fun one day. Okay, so now we have our 3 strips. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to lay them down on top of the background that we pieced. And this is the best part. Well, it's all the best part. It's just a lot of fun. Oh, I'm going to get rid of my cutting mat. And I have an ironing board underneath. Now, when I do a lot of fusing, I like to cover my ironing board with parchment paper. And this way, if any of the fusible, gets on the ironing board, it's on the parchment paper. I could roll it up and throw it out. So here's the background that we made originally. Okay. And we'll just give it a little press. Make it nice and flat. And remember, the seams are pressed open on the back because you don't want a little bulge underneath the curved lines. And we're going to take the center curvy strip. And we want it to go right down the middle. So that seam is right down the middle of the curvy strip. To do that, we'll start in the center and fold our strip in half and align that with the seam where the purple and the blue fabrics come together. And we're going to do that as we go down the edge, and it's good to start in the middle because then you can go one way and then the other way. So this step is the most time-consuming step because the rest of it goes just so quickly. Okay, almost done. Almost done. We're going to flip that over. Okay, and now we're going to press it down. And when you use a fusible web, you don't iron, you press. Follow the directions that comes with the fusible web. I use soft fuse because I like the way it peels, I like the way it's sticky, and I love it with silk because it does come off easily. Some of the other fusible webs don't come off that easily, and then they tend to fray the silk. Okay, so our first strip is down. Now, watch. We're going to take the Curvalicious tool, and now we're going to butt it up against the curves of the first applique strip. And we're going to take another applique strip, and we're going to use the tool for placement. And we're just going to snug it up in there and just let it follow the ruler, the tool. I keep calling it a ruler. It's really not a ruler. I shouldn't say that. Okay. And then we'll move this down here just to make sure. Okay. And then we're going to press it again. Press, 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 press. And that'll be our second strip. And then we're going to do the same exact thing with the third strip. And I don't mind putting these 3 down at once because then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch them down. And here is my third strip. Make sure that your fusible is on the side that goes down. And again, we're going to use the tool for placement. And we're going to place the strip in there. Just kind of put that in there. Let's check down this way and make any adjustments that we need to. Okay, that looks good. And here we go. We're going to press one last time. The tool has lines on it, registration lines to align it if you don't want to use the whole thing, and if you just want to use parts of it, so you can align it in at different places. There we go. So we've come quite far. putting the appliques down, and you can see we made a very complicated design in a very simple manner. So the next step is to stitch it down. I happen to be a big fan of the blanket stitch, so I stitch it down with a blanket stitch. You can use a zigzag or you can use a top stitch. So for the sake of easiness, I've already stitched mine down. I like to use shiny thread. I use either a rayon or you can use a polyester like Sulky. And there I've stitched them all down. I match my thread to what I'm appliquing down. So these are the 3 appliques, and I use light blue, teal, and light green thread. After you stitch down the appliques is to add the circles. The circles are also appliques, and the circles are the size of the openings in the ruler. So you can use this as a circle template. It happens to be 2 inches wide. So if you take your fusible web and then draw your circles on there, fuse them to a piece of fabric, back of fabric, and cut them out. You'll need about 32 circles. So I use a lot of different fabrics. I like a lot of color, and I also find it's a fun time to use complementary colors. That kind of adds a little zip to it. So this is how I make my circles. I'll do 4 of 8 different colors, and that'll give me a nice assortment. So here are all my circles cut out, and it's a nice TV project. I always like TV projects. And so now I'm just going to place them on the top and see what kind of nice designs I like. I want it to be pleasing to the eye. And I will place down all of my circles. And I know you're going, oh, how are they all going to stay in place? Because we don't want to fuse them all down now. Because if you fuse them down now, by the time you get to circle 32 or circle 10, stitching them down, they'll all be frayed. But we just want to lay them in place for a pleasing eye placement. Once I have them all laid out, so that I can remember and where they are, I take a photo. And that is a record to me of where all the circles belong. And then what I'll do is I'll just do a few circles at a time because I don't want them to get frayed, like I said. So for placement, I'll take my ruler, and to do 3 at a time, I'll lay it down. There's an easy 3, and here's 1, there's 2, and there's 3 of my circles. Carefully pick up the ruler and then press down your circles. Now they need to be sewed on. You can sew them on either by hand or by machine. By machine, you could use a blanket stitch, a zigzag, or a top stitch, like I said before, whatever you want. Or I happen to like handwork. So this is a fun thing to do by hand, and I use lots of fun color threads to give it a lot of a little pop. It's like the third element. You know, you have your piece, your skinny quilt, you have your circles for color, and then I use some thread for color. The next step, after all this is stitched down, and it makes a great car project, or if you're going to a ball game with your kid, or there's something on TV you want to watch, the next step is to quilt it. And I just want to share with you how I quilt it, because I know a lot of times we go, oh, I have this cool piece, but I don't know how to quilt it. So this is the silk piece. And to quilt the silk piece, to layer it, I use fusible spray-based. Not fusible. I use temporary spray-based because I don't want to put pinholes in the silk. With the cotton, you can use your favorite method, or you could use spray-based also. So what I do is, after all the circles are stitched down, I layer it. I happen to use cotton on the back. No need to use silk. And then I come and I stitch down. And when I get to the circle, I go around it because I want it to pop out. And then I enter the circle and I go in, and then out, 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 right on top of the same line. And when I get to the bottom, I stitch down to the next circle. Again, I go around it, circle in, around, then circle out and back down and to the next one. So that's how I get my little spiral swirls, and go all the way down to the end, and I match my quilting thread to the background. So you can see it looks different in each circle, but it's the same thread. Then after I do that one stitch down, then the next ones I do where I just kind of skirt the circle and go down and around, and the next one I go in between the edge and the one I just did, and then I stitch in the ditch. So I do that for each of the strips. When you're done quilting your little skinny Curvalicious quilt, you can either bind it with a traditional binding, or you can finish it by facing it. Facing gives a more contemporary look, and I have a link for how to face your quilts inside the Curvalicious brochure. Now, if you're interested in buying my new cool tool, I'm selling them in my Etsy shop, and also in my Etsy shop I have a kit if you want to make it out of silk, because silk is hard to find. I did all the hard work. I cut up the strips. In the kit it includes the silk, the stabilizer for the silk, the fusible web, and of course the directions for how to cut it. You can find the link to my Etsy shop on my blog. There's a special tab at the top of my blog that says Curvalicious. Click on the tab. It'll open up a new page. It'll give you the link to the Etsy shop where you can buy either the kit or the tool. There's also be a link for a Flickr group, and you can post your quilt to the Flickr gallery. It would be nice to see what everybody does with Curvalicious. And I'm also in the process of designing other style quilts using the tool, so that it's not just for these skinny quilts, but you'll be able to make bed-size quilts and lap-size quilts with all different designs. So come be part of the Curvalicious crew.